So today we are talking about lab work and why you should not chase numbers while you are on a testosterone replacement therapy protocol. Now, this doesn't mean that labs aren't important when getting on testosterone or when monitoring your therapy, because blood work tells us, hey, what you are, and it gives us an idea of what your baseline is. Not only that, it also shows us what kind of dose elicits what kind of response on paper. Now, that doesn't necessarily translate to symptomatic interpretation or actually how you respond to the therapy from a symptomology standpoint, but lab work is there to help guide us and to make sure that you're staying healthy and that your markers, quote unquote, on paper are being optimized and followed appropriately. All right, so here's what I want to talk about. I want to show how reference ranges, they're not consistent across the board. Hence, kind of why I'm getting at saying that if you're merely chasing numbers, if you're merely focusing and trying to get your testosterone program dialed in based purely on your lab ranges, well, guess what? You're not really ever going to achieve what you're trying to achieve because there's no consistency or standardization across the board. So here, let's start from the top left. So this is taken from American Esoteric Labs. Now, if you look at the values and the ranges they provide, their quote unquote, their normal ranges goes from 300 to 1080. Now let's scroll over to the right, the top right. This is LabCorp's reference range. So it goes from 264 to 916. Well, you could be within normal parameters on this one, but on this right here, you might not be, or vice versa. So we're starting on line 2 on the left. Now I'm highlighting it. This one was taken from Mountain Medical. We have a client that lives out in Salt Lake City, and he got his blood taken from a hospital system there. And if you look at this lab range, the bottom of the range is 650. The top of the range is 890. This single-handedly may be one of the narrowest ranges I've ever seen. But hey, if you're trying to qualify for TRT, this may be a great place to go to because, quite frankly, so many guys, I'd say probably 95% of guys that reach out to us would instantly fall under this and thus qualify. Go immediately to the right. This one I'm highlighting now was from a company called Physicians Labs. Their reference range goes from 72 to 524 nanograms per deciliter. 72, this is probably the lowest range I've ever seen, at least the lowest entry. This one is almost everybody will be considered normal at this point. Bottom left, we're looking at Quest Diagnostics. Their range goes from 250 to 1100. And immediately to the right of that, we're looking at TRT Labs. And theirs is 400 to 1200. What am I trying to get at by explaining all this, by showing you all these different lab values? Well, first of all, I'll say I'm not trying to promote that you go lab shopping if you're trying to get on testosterone replacement therapy, because quite frankly, TRT is something that you either need because you have a deficiency or you don't. But what I'm trying to get at is that if you are on testosterone replacement therapy and you're trying to get dialed in, or you're working with a provider who is hyper astringent about staying in only certain numbers, well, quite frankly, you should get a different provider, and you should change the mindset that testosterone is not about chasing labs, but it's about finding that symptomatic relief.